I'm happy to introduce Spike Firestein and Paul Zuckerman. Come on up, guys. Thank you.
Hello. Hi, guys. Thank you. Thank you. Electrifying job, sir. Well done.
Thank you. Thank
Paul,
you,
why don't you sit over there?
Yes,
Hi, everybody. It's good to see you all. You may or may not know, you know his voice. This is the real Zuckerman, my co-host for Spike's Car Radio. Hello. I thought we'd have him up here. Please don't feed him or keep your hands away from his mouth. He's dangerous, but if you're looking for loose women and illegal pharmaceuticals, he's the guy to talk to.
That guy right there. He's got the drugs. Yeah. The
Anyway,
women, that guy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We couldn't be more excited to be back here with you folks, and I want to thank Katie Waller and AIG who puts this on every year. It's a real treat for us to actually not just come here and drive cars and cause trouble, but to get in front of you all and talk cars, and we're going to do that today with someone really special. He's a comedian, he's an actor, he's a radio personality, television host, a New York Times best-selling author. He also hosts the Adam Carolla Show, which, you probably don't know this, holds the Guinness Book of World Records for most downloaded podcast. Can you believe that, Zuckerman? It's amazing.
Wow.
It's unbelievable. Brilliant. A dedicated car nut, Adam Carolla. Here he is. Hi, Adam. Good to see you, my friend.
Hey, Adam.
Welcome to this very special edition of Spike's Car Radio.
Here's how much of a car guy I am. I left the track this morning after doing a practice, practice qualifying this morning, and went straight to the DMV. I swear to you, because the DMV in LA is so screwed up, you can't get an appointment. So I made a DMV appointment out here off of Laguna Seca and renewed my license before I came here to talk about cars.
Wow. Congratulations.
That
deserves a lot of applause. What do you have to do to renew your license these days? I thought it came in the mail and you just check a box.
No, I had to go down. I had to take an 18-question test, which made me very nervous. I was back to, it's pass, fail. I passed. I got my temporary license, and here I am. Give them $36. They don't accept credit cards, and I'm like, I can't buy a beer on an airplane without a credit card. How is it that you don't accept credit cards? And she's like, we're experimenting with I was like, it's 2019. Experiment over. Metric system gone. Credit cards in. Just go ahead. Don't experiment with a pilot program to use credit cards at the you just use a credit card. How about that?
There you go. Well, congratulations on your new driver's license.
Thank you.
Now we're expected to start today. I want to start with the collector car market.
Sure.
I've been kind of tuned out all summer on it. What are your feelings on where we're at as the collector car market as a whole right now?
I think the vintage Lambo stuff is pretty flat, and it's been pretty flat. I think a lot of the Italian market, like the V12 market, is in general kind of flat. Not some of the modern supercars, those are doing okay. I feel like the Japanese market is really coming up, like 240Zs, and 240. I think one sold for $100,000 plus, and bring a trailer. Race cars are kind of where it's at, and cars with a story, like race cars with history. This ran at Le Mans, this ran at Sebring, this ran at Daytona. It seems like you take a Ferrari Daytona, it's been kind of flat for 5 years. You take I like a Ferrari Daytona, but it's been flat for 5 years. What do you want me to do?
Now, you bought one right at the moment they started to trail down,
Yes,
I remember.
I was having a moment of depression, and I should have just stuck with some ice cream and cookies. But instead I bid on the car at auction. That's what I did.
I love. There's nice ones here. They're nice cars, but the front engine V12 sort of Italian market I feel is flattened out. Porsche was, heading up, and it's calmed down a little. I feel like the race cars and then the lower end, kind of the NSXs and some of the Japanese stuff, And then the very top of the market, you know, the GTOs and the crazy Aston Martins, race cars with Le Mans history, those have been going. The kind of the middle Muras and Daytonas and Dinos, those have been, right, but the English stuff, like the Aston Martin has been going up, and the Group C stuff, like Lancia and the weird 80s.
Stratos,
Weird,
Audi Sport Quattros.
Right. Like 80s rally stuff has gone berserk. Like 80s rally stuff 6 years ago was like, get away from me, weirdo.
Right.
I don't want your weird car with all its turbos on it.
Right.
And now it's like 500 grand. It's entry level weirdo street Lancia.
Now, I heard that you, before any of these events, are going through every single auction. That you're looking at all the cars, at all the auctions this week, and coming up with a game plan. Is that true, or is that just a rumor?
We always try to find cars that either we like or we feel like represents cars that we have. And from the market perspective, when you talk to guys like David Gooding and Hans Wurr something or whatever, like car appraisers stuff, you go, hey, I have a 1994 Clayton Cunningham 300ZX, you know, Z car. Like, how much is it worth? And they go, we don't know, because there are no other cars that are really, there's no comps. So they try to find cars that are sort of like, well, it's a Roush Mustang, and it sold for blah, 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 and, you know, and this, that, and the other. Like, Tommy Kendall drove this Roush Mustang, and it sold for $600K. So we try to find cars we like, and then we try to find cars that are sort of comparable or could be comps to some of the cars that I own.
Right.
Just to find out where they're going.
I think any minute we're going to blow away into the sky, like one of those bouncy castles flying over Texas. But do you mentioned Bring a Trailer, and I've been thinking a lot about them because they really, they have our attention. They've had it for quite some time, but it seems like this year they've upped the types of cars that they're selling. They're selling nice cars. I know there's this Roof 73 911 RS on the site, and they're up and running all year long. Do you get the feeling that these guys might eat, the traditional auctioneer's lunch?
Well, I have thoughts on this because, the thing about if you're selling or like you're in the market for a Gullwing or a Dino Ferrari, a Gullwing Mercedes is like 1.2, but it's not really past that. Maybe 1.3 in there. If you want a Dino, kind of depends, chairs and flares or whatever. But it's 350 to 4. But when they put the 10% VIG onto that, the person who's raising the paddle has done the math.
Right.
So we're going to stop at 1.1 because when I get out of here, it's going to be 1.2 and change to buy that car. So if you're selling that car, you didn't get 1.2 and change. You got 1.1, and you basically just left 100 grand on the table. Bring a Trailer is kind of for the discerning eye going, like we just had a Porsche 962 with not a lot of history just sold. And I'm saying to my guys, like, I think that thing's 9 to $1 million. And it sold, it hammered on Bring a Trailer at $960K. But if you sold it here this weekend, it would stop at $860 because the guy didn't want to pay more than $1 million for it. And I think people are they've figured out the VIG, so to speak, and they're stopping it,
Do you ever worry about getting screwed on a car you buy at auction? I mean, have you ever been where you get something, you haven't driven it, you pay a lot of money for it, and now look at that.
You talking about my marriage?
I'm talking about...
That was devastating. But, automobiles?
Automobiles.
No, they treat me with respect and dignity. The sex is good. It's all there. Still fresh after all these years, still going strong.
All right.
Still get that come hither look from my 935 when I walk up on it.
I want to talk about that car because you were just at the track with a 935, right?
I was.
And that car, I think I was with you when you bought it at auction.
you were.
The same day as the Daytona was
Yes.
bought, right? If I'm not
I think he
mistaken.
did better.
Well, I hear you're still sorting that car. First of all, what is it like to have at the track? What races are you in with it right now?
Well, I'm in Group 5 5A now, which is like IMSA and GTO and GTU and whatever, like, I don't know, 73 to 81 or whatever. It's just everybody. It's a bunch of 935s and some pretty crazy Corvettes, like Greenwood big body Corvettes, and some 3.5 Batmobile BMWs, which we love, and some Z cars, and usually some M1s, although I don't see any M1s out today, and Decon Monzas, which are like the craziest race car ever.
What did you have to do to the car after you bought it? I mean, there's a car you buy at auction, right? You
Yeah.
didn't get a chance to drive it beforehand. How was it delivered to you? And then what have you been doing ever since then?
We took the car. I wanted to go race the car, so we dropped it off at Canepa's shop, and then we backed up a Brinks truck and just dumped it onto his driveway, you know. And then it actually hit another Brinks truck, which was pulling away, which was another customer's Brinks truck.
Yes.
So there's a lot of Brinks going around. And then he got it all kind of dialed in, so to speak. And then I said, well, we should meet at Sonoma and go around for a few times. And we did, and then I drove it, and we had a passenger seat in it. And then I said, you know, take the passenger seat out, and we just met for the Monterey Historics. And we did that 2 years ago. And then last year was Datsun, Nissan, or whatever, 50 years or whatever, so I brought a Newman Nissan. And then this year we're back with the 935, which, you know, like it's an old car with a lot of races, and some of the suspension stuff was a little out of, you know, cattywampus, and we just kind of fixed it.
Right. And do you do that yourself? You have a pretty big shop in North Hollywood.
Yeah.
Once it leaves Canepa and then you want to do more sorting, is that something you take on?
Yeah, we did it at my shop. Just got a frame table and put it on the frame table and hung some plumb bobs and fired a couple lasers and found out there was a kind of a difference between the right and the left side.
Did Canepa, we talk about this all the time because we've both had cars up there. He likes to deliver when he's done with his work this little booklet with photographs of one of his mechanics with a white glove pointing at the things that they fixed.
Right.
Did you get one of those fairy tale books?
I got a dossier.
Yeah. Little dossier.
Yeah. It's like the Unabomber wrote it.
Yeah.
Let me ask you this. Why are you racing vintage as opposed to new stuff? What is it about vintage cars that you prefer to race?
Well, I like the cars, you know, better themselves. You know, what's better than a 935?
But they're not as safe as a new race car, right?
No, I wouldn't imagine. I wouldn't imagine they are. But I think only one guy's ever died in a 935, and that's Ralph Stumlin. But his name's on my car. So I don't know if that's a good sign, or maybe we got it out of our system, right?
Yeah. You don't worry about that.
Yeah, he drove with Newman at Le Mans in '79 in my car, and then he died at Riverside, I think, in '81. Interesting guy. If you look up Ralph Stumlin, he had 2 wings break off of cars at full speed. Like he had a F1 car wing bust off and had a horrific accident, and then he had a wing bust off on a 935 and had a horrific accident. So it's like 2 bad, weird, sort of catastrophic failures to wings, which is kind of random. I drove in a modern Trans Am race at Willow Springs and in a GT1 in Trans Am 1 in a C7R like 2-frame Corvette, and that was good. I mean, I had a water bottle and stuff. Like you had a switch. It had a switch you could drink water. It had a radio. It had a sequential gear shifting. Like it was kind of
fire safety.
Yeah. It was. It felt good. Like it felt normal. And the guy was like at a computer and stuff, and he was doing things to the suspension, and he had like the whole readout on the dash with all the. I was playing Angry Birds like during the whole back straight over there. And it was like kind of comfortable, and I had like a fan blowing and stuff, and it was good. It was good. I liked driving that car. Like it was nice. I would do more of that. Yeah.
But is it, You know, where does the fascination with the Paul Newman cars start? Is that why so much of this stuff is vintage, even though at the time Paul Newman's driving new stuff?
You know, probably. I was less of a Newman guy and more of a Datsun guy at the beginning. So I just got, I got a 610. I got a Bob Sharp 610, and it was Newman Sharp racing for a long time. But this was a Bob Sharp before he met Newman, and then like kind of word got out like, oh, if you got a Bob Sharp 610 little four-banger Datsun, like they're like, there's a Z car that Newman drove, this championship car from '85. That's for sale. It's like just sitting in Danbury, Connecticut or something, like with like a flat tire. And I was like, oh, okay. And then you just become that person. Like if you're the woman who collects hippos, like stuffed hippos and hippo mugs. Like it starts innocently enough with a hippo mug, but you put it on your desk at work and someone's like, I know what Cheryl Ann wants for Christmas. And then you get a hippo shawl, and next thing you have hippo slippers, and then you're like the hippo. And then people start calling you like, hey, I found some hippo stuff. You want it? And now you start living this life where you're like, I guess I'm that person. So that's what happened with me and Newman.
You're the hippo girl.
I'm the hippo girl.
So how many Newman cars are we talking about right now?
Well, 11 now.
Wow.
We just got the Newman Porsche, another
74
Porsche.
911S.
Yeah.
I didn't know that there were that many Newman race cars.
Well, there's kind of like a strata of Newman cars. There's like team cars that he drove for a season,
Right.
you know, so they have logbooks, and he drove it for 1986. He drove it the whole season, you know. And then there's a little higher than that, there's like team car. He drove the whole season, and then he bought the car and like owned the car and drove it at some like vintage events or fun events or whatever. And then as you start like getting down the line a little, it's like he drove it at Daytona. It's like a Roush Mustang, and he drove it with two other guys at Daytona in '89, you know. And it's like, it's got his name on it, and he drove it at Daytona, but it's not like he drove it for a season kind of thing. It was kind of like he got like, I drove the C7R Corvette. I drove one time. Like, you could say, well, Adam, if there's any value to Adam Carolla cars one day, which I don't think there will be, but if there is, you go, he drove it at Willow Springs at a Trans Am race to get third place,
Right.
you know, and someone will go, give me an extra 49 cents, you know. But
He got his license renewed here.
he got his license renewed here.
Pebble Beach Car Week.
But so I have a lot of his team cars, but then there's like the Porsche. He and Bill Freeman, I think, drove it at Sebring in '77. So he came in like 11th in GT class or something, like, you know, 20th overall or something. But he drove it at Sebring, he co-drove it, and they finished. And that's about it with Newman in that car.
And you have any memorabilia?
Yeah.
What I heard you bought somebody's entire collection of Newman memorabilia. Was it Bob Sharp?
That's hippo stuff. I got hippo. Remember, I have pajamas. I have a fitted sheets. Bob Sharp.
Bob, what did he have exactly? So he calls you and he says, I have the collection of all the stuff I've been saving over the years of my own, Paul Newman's. He's going to
Tom
take it to
Cruise.
auction. What?
Tom Cruise.
Oh,
Tom Cruise.
when there was the Newman-Tom Cruise connection.
Oh, right.
Remember?
So
Right.
what? And you say just package it up. I'd like to buy the whole deal. But what did you get? Like, I'm curious because with McQueen we're talking like sunglasses and racing suits from Le Mans and from the movie.
Yeah.
What is the Paul Newman memorabilia collection?
A lot of empty salad dressing bottles that he didn't. They said Ken's, but he said, "Yeah, you got to pull the label back. You'll see. You'll see." I haven't done it yet. I take the man's word for it.
But the watch. The Newman Daytona sells for $16 million.
I think it was 17 and change with the VIG.
There you go.
So what I got from Bob Sharp. So Bob Sharp. Well, when we did the documentary, I just went to his house. He lived at the time a little bit away, 5 miles from Lime Rock in Connecticut. And I just went over there, and he had all the helmets and all the whatever. And we just agreed on a price. I think it was like $200,000. And he just said everything. You get fire suits, you get helmets, you get you get Tom Cruise stuff. He sent me over like stuff like Bob Sharp, Datsun Salesman of the Year in 1971. I'm like, Bob, you don't have to send me everything. Like his wife's wedding dress from her first marriage. Like, it's like he literally pulled padding and carpet up and just rolled it all. Like sent every windbreaker. I have like Scott Sharp, his son's helmets. Like,
Well, what's the Tom Cruise stuff? I mean, were there any watches? Were there any Paul Newman watches?
no, sadly, there was some helmets, some like well-worn helmets, which are kind of interesting.
The racing suits by themselves. Like I know the Steve McQueen racing suit was offered to a friend of ours for $100,000, and we laughed about it, and then it was sold for $1 million not long after.
Right.
You know, so it looks like you're already making a little money there.
Well, I guess if I
What do you do
sell
with
it,
What do you do with it?
well, I'll tell you what I do with it. So I had his helmets. I had.
Zuckerman,
That's right.
control yourself.
Okay.
Yeah, we play a game called Reverse Chicken, where
Yeah.
I have my wife put on the fire suit, and then we don't get in the pool though. But anyway, so what happened was I had his fire suits. I have like 2 or 3 of them, and a couple his helmets, and they're cool. There's the radio, and in the back it has his birth date and his last tetanus shot and his blood type and everything all written on the back of the
that's
helmet
cool.
and everything. And if you see pictures of him from the day, you'll see the helmet with the PLN like on the whatever. And I had it just like in lucite cases and just sort of sitting out in my sort of museum, showroom, whatever it was. And then the watch sold for $17.5 million.
Right.
And I was like, I think we should take this stuff and put it in the safe instead of just leave. It's just kind of laying around, basically.
Right.
So now it's sitting in a safe somewhere.
Oh my God.
But I don't know that it's worth. I don't know that it's worth anything. It's worth something.
That's exciting. With the Tom Cruise stuff, you don't know what that stuff is? Is it just stuff from the movie, or just
It's Tom Cruise's fire suit
from the real race?
and Tom Cruise's helmet from when he ran with Newman and Sharp in like 87, 88. Color Money.
Yeah.
He came over. He was shooting a movie with Paul. Paul said, why don't you, like to run around with us? He raced in showroom stock for a season, I think, and then he raced in whatever GTU or some whatever. They built him a car. Like Nissan, of course, was into Tom Cruise, wanting to drive a Nissan. So Bob did a thing where he's like, we're happy to see him leave without getting hurt. Right? He's basically saying he drives like an asshole and he's going to kill himself.
I'm going through my notes here, and I'm remembering, I have a friend of mine swears he saw a Porsche 935 driving around Glendale on the city streets. Is that possible?
Yes, it's highly possible.
Congratulations. That's good.
That car's not street legal, though.
Who said?
No. Well, I drove it on the street, so
All right.
What came first?
Let me ask
the
you just
ticket or
about
the
your-
egg?
your-
No, what happened was this.
So you did. You were driving this
Oh
car?
yeah. Well, because we changed a whole bunch of suspension geometry
Right.
on it, and when I brought it out to Rennsport, like we thought we fixed a bunch of stuff, and then when we brought it out to Rennsport last year, I got in the car to like drive it, and I didn't make it out of the paddock without it. Like something was wrong big time. So I said, we're not doing that again. Like before we take it to the track, I'm getting in it in flip-flops and in board shorts, but we're going. I'm going to drive it down the street on a Sunday. I'm not an idiot, and I don't want to hit the truck coming out of the Home Depot, and we're going to drive it, and I'm going to let it track, and I'm going to see if the wheels, doing that. And I'm going to brake and see if it's pulling, whatever. I just did a couple of hot laps around Glendale, and then I would pull it back into my shop. I was like, all right, it's good. Like, we can go.
Wow. That's
Yeah, because
fantastic.
otherwise you have to pack it up and take it to Willow Springs.
Yeah, but you see it at speed, and that's how you sort it. Well, I want to ask you what kind of collector you are. We know a lot of collectors and car collectors, and they vary, between very finicky, obsessive, compulsive about things. What kind of collector are you, first and foremost? Are you a guy that gets upset about dings and little things on the car that are, he was just upset that the Zagato 356 that we brought, the windshield was a little foggy, and I'm kind of the same way too. I'm a little finicky about that stuff. What about you?
I like this stuff to be nice. I like it to work. I have thoughts about that when it comes to like cars you're presenting or showing or even selling and photographing or whatever. But as far as the race cars go, there's it'll be sitting in my warehouse, and then somebody will come over and they'll have like the 5-year-old, and the 5-year-old will like grab it and open the door and be like trying to climb in it, and the parent will be yelling, no, 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 and I'm like, let him do it, because that's all we do. I mean, it's a race car. It's like it's gonna get shit stuck to it. It's gonna get dinged up. It's gonna be pulled in and pulled out. Like it's gonna get messed with. I mean, if you can't be worried about chips or dings or whatever on a race car, because you're gonna go out and it's gonna come back covered with junk. So it's like, I don't know. I feel like if it's a race car and you're taking it out and racing, and a 5-year-old wants to like open the door and crawl in it, and you're screaming no, like that's a weird mixed message to send to the car, right? Because you're gonna go out and try to thrash on it, right? So, with the race cars, I just figure drive them, use them, whatever.
And are you, when you think of the word preservation, what does that mean to you when it comes to a car? Let's set aside race cars for a second and just the collectible cars in your collection. What is preservation for you? Is it the factory, or is it the story of the car as it's arrived into your garage? The people who have owned it, maybe the modifications they've made themselves. What do you find valuable in a car like that?
Well, sometimes it's a case-by-case basis. I have some BRE cars. We love Pete Brock. And some of those cars, like I have 2 BRE 510s, they get whacked up and hacked up and sent to, like, the Dominican Republic, and box flares put on them made out of wood, and stuff. And, like, those kind of cars, I'm like, we should put this back to exactly what it was when Pete Brock and BRE built this 510 in 1969. So I have those kind of thoughts on those cars. Some cars, like my 935, ran as an Apple liveried car with the K3 sort of big body on it and stuff. Like the following year, sometimes you think, well, what do you want to do? But it's like, run it as it ran at Le Mans originally in '79. When in doubt, I think you go back to how it started. I have a Newman Oldsmobile Cutlass Trans Am car that when I got it, it had a Camaro body on it, because that's how Newman ran it for the '89 season or something. And then when he was done, some years later, he bought it. And they said to him, oh, don't you want to run an Oldsmobile Cutlass body on it? You want like a cool Camaro body on it. So he put his cool Camaro body on it and just painted it red, white, and blue, but didn't have any sponsorship. And then I drove it a few times at a few events, and it was great. But I was like, I think it needs to go back to the original Oldsmobile Cutlass body that he drove it on. So my head on it is like, let's get it back to how it was when he drove it in Trans Am in '89, but I'm going to keep the Newman Camaro body and display it. Like, here's how he drove it, but he also drove it this way first. So I don't know. It's kind of go back to what it started as.
And what do you get into on the weekend? You want to go into your hangar and grab a car. What are you driving? Like, what is it? The rare, difficult to drive stuff, or
I-
Zuckerman? He's got these beautiful cars in his collection, and more often than not, he just jumps into an '80s BMW and loves it. He likes the drivers. By the way, me too. I just like to get in a car and drive, and I don't necessarily want to be challenged that much. What are the cars in your collection that you get in more often than not?
Most all the stuff I have are race cars now, so I tend to just tinker around with them or see what the progress is on putting Newman's GT1. I have his '86 championship car that's like a two-frame car, but it's in a lot of pieces right now, and like the engine's at Rebella. We got to get the engine back from Rebella. They want money. They're holding my engine hostage. They cut off the tip of a spark plug and they sent it back in a rag. My wife fell apart. So like this is always just like we got to put it all back together. But like in terms of like what am
What
I?
are you driving?
I drive my 935 around Glendale. on
That's
Sundays.
hilarious. Well, you can
No, I
register
don't
old
do-
race cars.
I'm not that.
Last time I saw you, you were in a Jaguar, some new
Yeah,
Jaguar.
yeah,
But
I'm
that
not
was a
that-
car you were on a deal with, right?
I'm not that cool like around town. I'm just
No,
kind
you're
of like
on the track.
Yeah, I'm the opposite of Jay Leno, which is he has told me that he only wants cars he can drive on the street,
right.
basically. And I went, well, I like cars I can drive on the track.
Yeah.
And so we'd make quite a couple if he'd ever see things my way. I've tried to remove most of the sexuality from the proposal, but he still just says talk to the hand.
So great. It's very common for race car drivers to say that. They prefer to make noise on the track, and then they're in Teslas a lot of times.
Yeah, it does. I mean,
Street cars just don't impress them in the way race cars impress them.
well, I think it's like when you take the kid that's getting into trouble on the street, you sign him up for the Golden Gloves, and you have the off-duty cops teach him how to box, and then he doesn't get any more street fights. Like I think there's a version of that for cars where it's like, the street, it seems like trouble, you could get stabbed or something. Like, I don't know, there's too many tickets floating around Burbank and Glendale, like where I am too. It's like, I don't want to think about it. Like, I just want to strap in and do it like officially.
Tell me about your production company. Are you only making new documentaries about motorsports? It's chassis.com, right?
Yes.
I remember you did
SSY.
the 24-Hour War, right?
Right.
And now there's the big Christian Bale, Matt Damon movie, Ford versus Ferrari. Did they
That's
come
right.
to you
No, they never.
for information? Because you were there first, right? And you did a great
It's the
documentary
best-
about it.
Thank you. It's the best part of Hollywood. I was just at the Shelby Museum in Boulder, I think, Colorado. Any of you guys been to the Shelby Museum in Boulder? It's a little off the beaten path, but it's a killer museum. Like they have some original Shelby Cobra Daytonas. Speaking of Pete Brock, they have they have GT40s, a lot of significant GT40s. They have the Ken Miles GT40 there. I mean, they have everything. And I was like, as I said to him, I go, oh, when they were making the movies, did like the producers like ask you any question? You own all the cars. And they're like, nah, they didn't say anything. And I'm like, yeah, because they don't want facts or anything.
Right.
So, no, I feel like in Hollywood, like if they ask you a question, if they send you an email going, hey, you made a doc about this movie, we're going to make a movie about this, then somehow that's some sort of entree into me suing them at some point.
Exactly.
Like, so if
Yeah.
there's any communication whatsoever, I'm going to sue them and go, that was my idea, and I got an email that says you had questions to
Right,
prove it.
right,
You know,
right.
so I think they distance themselves from it.
What do you have coming out on Chassis? What are your new documentary slate?
We have one called Hippos, Hippos, Hippos. This is a young woman. No, healing through hippos.
I want
so
a
it's
piece
another.
of that, or I'm going to sue you.
No, we have the Willie T. Uppity, the Willie T. Ribs doc, first black driver at Indy. That one's finished. We just finished Shelby America, which is we're going to show actually tonight. I think the tickets are probably used up, but we're showing that sold out. Shelby Club, not because I'm good. They just buy things.
No, they
you
can
know?
still come. Look, there's
Yeah.
not that many of them.
Yeah.
Just show up.
I'm
He's
going to
get you in.
I'm going to be at the Golden State Theater doing my brand of non-car related comedy. If you're interested, Saturday night, a few tickets to that left. But we're working on Shelby. We're just finishing. Uppity, we did just finish. We're actually working on one on memes. We're working on one on Mad Magazine.
Oh, wow.
As well. We have, God, we've got a bunch of different docs, mostly car-centric docs. We want to do, K-Rock, thanks. We want to do the, trying to work on a K-Rock, the radio station doc. We're trying to work on a
That's
Whittington
great.
Brothers project for the Porsche guys here.
Yeah, wow. And it's all going to roll out on chassis.com.
Yeah, theoretically, yeah. At this point, I mean, unless somebody wants to step up and cut a check.
And take care of it. Let me ask you, is it true that you did comedy at a traffic school? That you were doing stand-up for a comedy traffic school?
Well, I didn't do stand-up for comedy traffic school, but I taught comedy traffic school, which is a form of art, you
Yes.
know,
What
right
is-
below mine.
What is that? Is this before you're doing stand-up?
Yeah. Well, it was kind of during, you know, it's during the lean years. I was...
But it's 8 hours.
It's
right?
8 hours, yeah.
But you're not doing 8 hours of stand-up. You're trying to make the information funny. Just tell us about what we would have seen had we walked into
All
comedy
right, I
traffic
got
school.
it. Okay,
Maybe
so
that
I'm
would
only
grow.
going to do like 3 hours because I know you guys are pressed. I'm not going to do the whole set. I'll
That's
do,
all right,
I'll do
that's
like
fine.
40%.
We've got time. We've
Yeah.
got time.
So I work for Let Us Amuse You Traffic School, Lettuce. Let Us, you get it?
Yes.
It's super confusing, not funny. It was like 1989 or something. I thought, like, I had two thoughts. Like, I thought, if I could stand here in front of this super hostile crowd who blamed me for being there, like for ruining their Sunday, if I could stand there for 8 hours worth of class and kind of make them laugh, then I could really do anything. Like that was kind of my thought,
Sure.
like comedically. And then the other thought was, I'm a professional now because it's $86 a class, and I'm getting all, you know, I'm getting
Yeah, you're
$9 an hour to do stand-up, but I'm still looked at myself as like entering the realm of professional comedians. And then the one thing that I remember, and it was like a really good exercise. Like you'd have to go to some Holiday Inn or YMCA or whatever on a Sunday or Saturday and just do this class from 8 till 4 in the afternoon, you know? And it's like, if you could win them over, if you get them not to be so miserable or angry or whatever, you know, they rolled through a four-way stop and now the world is destroyed. Like somehow that'd be a victory for me. But
Did you do an opening monologue? I mean, where do
Well,
you fit the comedy into the information?
here's-
That's what I'm confused
here's the
about.
comedy of working for a comedy traffic school.
Okay.
It's not really in the actual delivery of the message or material. It's more what goes on back at headquarters, like when the head Let Us Amuse You traffic instructor is going like, hey, I've been here 13 years, so I think I know what I'm doing. Like, you're thinking, you're such a loser. You've been doing comedy traffic school for 13 years. But you have to kind of look up to him, you know? And then he's like, now listen, these people could go to Sears for $22, or they could go to Acme, you know, for $23. They're paying $26, all right? And for that, they deserve premium comedy, right? Like, okay, so it's $4 more.
Right.
It's 50 cents an hour more.
Yeah, yeah.
They're spending it, and they want to know they're dealing with professionals, like professional grade comedians that let us amuse you. So I was like, so how do we let them know that? Because my way of letting them know it would be funny. Well,
Right.
let's be funny, and that'll send
Yes.
a message. They're like, listen, do not be scared to embellish your credits. Like when you get up there, you let them know right from Jump Street how good your career's going, how much you're crushing it out there. I'm like, listen, it's 7:45. We're in the Conejo Valley, and we're in an Arts Deli that's not open that day. How good is the comedy career? Like, you think, I just opened for the Rolling Stones. We just got off we're on North American tour. We just flew in from Brazil on a private jet so I could make $80. Telling you losers what's funny about passive restraints. Like, I said, let's not embellish that much. Clearly it's not going well.
Right,
If I just sold out Madison Square Garden, it wouldn't be here. So it's kind of a flying in the face of facts.
How long did you do that for? And did it help your comedy? Did it do anything for it, or?
Well, it lets you realize that you could be comfortable on your feet for a long period of time, and that if you had to MC some event or some charity or something like that, like you felt like, oh, okay, I can go do 20 minutes, or I can stand here and work this auction or whatever, because you got used to kind of being on your feet. I did it for probably a year. I did it for enough time that I should never have to go to traffic school again. Like, I feel like if I get a ticket, I shouldn't have to do the 8 hours, because I've done 508 hours already. I had to do 3 traffic schools before I taught. So I did 8 hours, 8 hours, and 8 hours as a student. And I feel like I've accrued some good faith with the county.
Well, I'm gonna open this up to these guys to ask questions in a minute. There's something, when you were on my podcast last time, I forgot to ask you this. I had heard a story that at one point you were getting towed in a BMW, I believe, and you hopped in the car and drove it off the tow truck. Is that true, or am I just misremembering this story?
It's not false.
What is the situation where that happens?
I didn't drive it off a flatbed. Like, I'm not a maniac. I had an E36 M3. Yeah, all right. And we were taping the Man Show. We used to tape the Man Show on a Friday. Yeah.
Yeah, you can applaud. Go ahead.
We'd be when we'd finish on a Friday, like tape like 2 shows on a Friday, and we'd always go down to this billiards place, like down on Sunset Boulevard or something in Hollywood, and we'd go upstairs and just drink pitchers of beer and shoot pool. Like, what would you expect, right? And all the riders and everyone would just go over there and have fun. And I parked. There was no parking at the place. The lot was all full up, and there was a 7-Eleven across the street. And I didn't want to pull into the 7-Eleven like right out front of the cash register and then walk across the street and go leave for 4 hours. So it was on the corner, and I just pulled right underneath the sign on the outer corner, like on a gas station, like where they sell the velvet pictures of E.T., you know, like in North Hollywood where I'm from, or the Virgin Guadalupe beach towels or whatever, like when you see those weird, like that part of the gas station, like next to the signs. I'm like, I'm out of the way, and I'm not holding anybody up. And then I went across the street, had a couple of beers, shot some pool. Next thing you know, it was like 1 in the morning, and some like PA came running upstairs, and he was like, "You're getting your car towed." And I'm like, I'm getting my car towed, and like I ran across the street, and the car was in full tow. So it was like one of the ones where they put the slings underneath the rear tires, and they just lift it up. It's got those 2 arms, you know, that, like, yeah, it's like pickle fork arms, and it's lashed down to the arms, and the driver's there with his girlfriend, you know, and I'm like, let's not tow the car, you know. It's like, oh, we're towing it, you know, and I'm like, come on, man, like, what would it cost, you know? And then I'm like, why don't we just let it down, and I'll give you some money, and then I'll just go home. And he's like, what do I tell my boss? And I said, you ever get called out to tow a car, and you get there, and the car's not there?
Right.
And he goes, all the time. And I go, okay, tell him that happened again. And he's like, I don't know about that. And then at a certain point, he got in the car, and he started to drive away. He got in his tow truck, and then I jumped into my car, knowing that most of the ballast was in the front. You know, the brake ballast is in the front wheels, and I just put my foot on the brake, and he'd get out of the car, and I'd get out of the car, and he'd start yelling at me, and then we'd run back to each car, and then he'd start dragging me away, and then he'd get out of the car again, and then I'd get out of the car again. And at a certain point, I said, just let me go to the ATM and like, you know, I wasn't saying bribe, but I was saying like, I will pay you for the amount of the towing. If it's $120 or whatever, I won't have to go to downtown LA and get a ride and blah, blah, blah. He's like, no. And then at a certain point, I just said, why are you being an asshole? And he's like, oh, you're calling me an asshole? It's like, yes, you've been acting like an asshole for 40 minutes. And he goes, now it's on. And he jumps back into his truck. And some drunk segment producer I'm with named Tom, he's like, unlash the wheels. And I'm like, what? And he's like, I undid it. And I'm like, he undid it, man. He undid like the passenger side. And I'm like, what? He said, undo it. And he undid his side. And I just pulled the, you know, thing was like a tie down, you know. And I just released the tension on it. He's like, go. And I get in the car. It's a 5-speed, I think. I get in the car and the rear's up on the thing. And they're like down these little saddles, you know. And I get in the car. And I put it in first, and the wheels are 4 feet off the ground in the back, and I just throw some revs at it and just dump the clutch, and the thing like goes, and it just like falls forward. I hear a sound on the way down.
Not a good sound.
Not a good sound. Thing hits, and my guy's just yelling, go, go, go. And he goes running like into the night, and I just take off, haul in. I go to my house. I like draw the blinds, shut all the lights. Like I think the feds are coming now. Like he must have my driver's license. He must have all the pertinent information. He rode in, and I just keep waiting for like the cops to show up. Like it's like I think I may have violated the RICO Act or something. Like you can't drive off a tow truck, you know. I just waited and waited and waited like all night. Like just kept every car that would come up the street. Like it's the feds. It's a Fury. What is that thing? A Gran Torino? So no one ever showed up. No one ever called. Nothing at the DMV. Like nothing. This guy just went like, I think this guy just went, touche, dude. Like, hey, if you're gonna drive up. He had all the info written down on his. He just drove off. I just drove off, and then I got up the next morning. Yeah. Well, a little bit. I got up the next morning, and I popped the trunk, and where the spare was on the back that was kind of an innie had been turned into an Audi. There was I don't know why, it was just a hairline scratch on the bumper, like nothing, like just a zero scratch on the bumper. I remember getting my buddy Chris, who was a big dude who happened to be with me. I was like, hey, jump in there. He got in the back of my trunk and like, and he pushed it back down. That was it.
And that was it.
That was it.
Makes me miss the Man Show.
Yeah.
There's no hope of that show coming back with all the reboots that are going on. I know Crank Yankers was brought
Crank
back.
Yankers is
Congratulations.
coming back. Thanks.
The Man Show, no one's approached. Would it work in this day and age, do you
I
think?
think the problem is Jimmy has a career. and he doesn't want to get caught up in the Me Too movement, you know.
You're very humble. You have a huge career. I happen to know that we're both at Podcast One, and you represent a full 1/2 of the 200 shows. You were the biggest profit maker for that place because your shows are so big, powerful.
Well, tell that to Jimmy Kimmel next time you speak to him because he doesn't recognize
broadcast television's going away.
Yeah, that's what I'll tell
Podcasts are
him.
where it's at.
That's what I'll tell
Who
him.
wants to ask a question of any of us before we go? Yes, Spike's Car Radio shirt. Thank you.
Yes.
A delight.
Huge fan. Listen to every show.
Thanks. Oh, wait a minute. Thanks.
Who knows?
And
Thanks.
I've listened to your show
Oh, okay.
before as
Thanks.
well. I've got kind of a Z, actually a V and 3Z question.
All right.
One, are there any Valvoline stickers available?
Shit, I left them all. I left them all at the hangar.
Damn.
But give me,
Okay.
give me
That's
your
an inside
address. I'll
reference.
send you something.
All right.
I've got
and then,
hundreds.
Great
so
color
as far as Z's go, the Zagato, I did see it up there, and I listened
Yes.
to the big Willie Henderson.
Robinson. Big
Robinson.
Willie Robinson.
And the sound, because I've always wondered on that rev, the vroom on the show, which you guys discussed on that program, that it's unknown what that sound comes from. Can the
It came from
Zagato,
a free sound effects library.
right? Yeah, it did. It came from the.
That's
Can
where
the
it came from.
Zagato end up replacing that? Possibly.
We could, once we get the car sorted. The car was just delivered a week ago.
And it's beautiful.
And thank you. We just took the first drive in it, so we're in the process of kind of taking the whole thing in, and we might do that. We
Right on.
could do
And
that.
then the next Z would be Zorzi,
Zorzy.
Is he?
You've
is
got
he
all
or
the inside references
Is
of
he
our
or the
shows.
Catman going to be on anytime soon?
He's talking about, there was a car sold last year. Where, Zuckerman?
It was sold, it was one of Jan Coombs' cars,
John Coombs' car.
and it was sold out in Florida.
Right, at Amelia.
At Amelia.
And it came from an Italian collector whose first name I forget, but whose last name was Zorzi, who was very fastidious about how he kept his cars. So he kept foam between the doors. He wouldn't allow anybody in his house to
Great
slam the
car.
doors. It's become this little verb we use now in the show for anybody who is obsessive about their cars. Like Zuckerman and I sometimes keep the plastic on new cars for a year
Great
before we
stuff.
even pull everything off. In the GT2 RS we have that.
And then the third Z would
I've
be,
been trying to get in touch with Zorzi,
Okay,
but
good.
to no avail. But really, you have more questions?
and
Other
then the
people
third
have
Z
questions.
would be just, actually not a question, but Zuckerman in a Speedo with a
Oh,
beret.
man. All right, sit
in
down.
Corsica?
Sir. Sit down.
We can go outside.
Thank you very
Yes.
much, Bill. All right, who else has a question here? Yes, you, sir.
You know, it's interesting when people are sleeping in cartoons, they put Z's over their head. Like another Z-related question.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we were talking about cars that have been like really hot and then maybe cooled down, and like the first one that came to mind was the air-cooled Porsche Turbos.
Right.
And do you see maybe like any cars from the water-cool era of Porsches becoming real hot in the next 10, 15, 20 years?
Specifically, like the 996s? Like, is that what we're talking about? Yeah, as we see air-cooled heat up, Zuckerman. Adam.
I would say definitely 997s, I think, are going to be popular, particularly the GT3 cars, the RS cars, the 4.0s. Those are going to be big. And for a 996, a GT3 or a GT2 is a winner. But will we see crazy appreciation like we saw over the past, 10 years ago to 5 years ago? I don't think so. Maybe.
Well, 928s are moving up.
Yeah,
In the
Yeah.
weird water-cooled department, technically. Like, there are some of those 928s and 944 turbos and stuff like that. Like, I think the off-brand Porsche stuff is interesting and it's going to move up. Like, 928s were nothing all day long, 944 turbos. Like, anything that was a non-911 has never had any value, and now a lot of the weird galaxy of cars, 914, 914 sixes are
always
going
been
up.
great
How about 912s? I mean, air-cooled,
Those have
but
always
Jesus
been great
Christ.
cars. Well, Magnus was just on the podcast yesterday, and he's in this zone, 928s, and he and I
944.
both like the 2004 996 GT3.
Oh,
That
yeah.
was one of my first GT3s, and I loved it, and then I would get into it today. But again, you're dealing with an engine that may explode at some point, and you just have to. Yours exploded. Well, I'm sorry, sir. Fix it, drive it.
Yes, I'd like to know if, does your buddy Jimmy Kimmel appreciate your expertise, your automotive expertise? I mean, do you advise him on what to purchase at all?
Good
Just a question on that.
When you make a killer lasagna at your house, does your cat really fully appreciate it? Or would you say your cat is too simple to really fully understand what you do with the oregano and how you soak the cheese in water overnight and then use the strainer? You know what I mean? It takes a certain intellect to appreciate what we're doing here. Jimmy does not possess that intellect, and so sadly, no. Yeah, like what if you took your cat and you put it in front of that huge symphonic hall, that opera hall in Australia? Do you think your cat would marvel at the architectural wonders of it? Or would it take a piss and walk off with some guys eating a tuna sandwich? Okay, well, that's what Kimmel is.
Wow.
Look, I don't disparage you, man. I'm simply drawing a... I'm simply telling the truth and drawing a
I have a
conclusion.
question.
Yes.
Yes.
We're guests of Kathy Calhoun, and she fell in love with cars when she was a little girl. She has 15, a number of beautiful cars. When did you fall in love with cars? Was it at an early age?
For me? Mm-hmm. Yeah, I always loved cars, I love all things sort of mechanical, and anything mechanical would work for me. But then obviously cars are kind of a best expression of all things mechanical, with an aesthetic part of it and so many different facets of it. But my dad didn't like cars. My mom didn't like cars. We didn't have any money, and we didn't have a garage or anything. So, and I didn't have any money either. So there was no way to satiate that. So I just, and then to sort of compound things, for the first part of my career, I had to drive a pickup truck because I did construction. I was a carpenter. So I drove like crappy mini Datsun pickup trucks, and just I loved cars from afar. You know, like I couldn't have a car. I couldn't afford a car. I needed a truck because I was carrying plywood and sheetrock and everything. So I used to just stare at all the car magazines and remember when like the 959 came out, and, like just staring at it, going, "Oh my God!" Like never think I'd even see one in person. And now I just walked past one at Laguna Seca. I think Kenepa was in it. I just fired a snot rocket at it, and I kept walking. You know, so that's where I'm at now.
Yeah. All right. Thank you all for coming, everybody. It's been a pleasure. Adam Carolla. We'll see you next week on Spike's Car Radio. For those of you listening at home. Here we go. We're done, my friend.